The train screamed through the empty valley, leaving behind only dust, echoes, and a young woman clutching a bundle to her chest. The baby inside stirred, let out a soft cry, and buried its face into the blanket as if sensing its mother's fear. The woman didn't even know where she was. Somewhere past the Dakota line, the edge of nowhere. Her shoes were caked with mud, her dress torn at the hem, her eyes hollow from the weight of sleepless nights and unanswered prayers. The sign above the old station creaked in the wind, half the letters missing. There was no one around except a stray dog sniffing along the tracks, and an old telegraph pole leaning against the sky. She looked down at the baby, whispering softly, "Hush now. We'll find someone. We have to." But her voice broke halfway through. There was no name to call the child by, no father to claim him, no paper to prove she existed at all. Everything she'd been was gone the moment she stepped off that train. The conductor had pitied her enough to let her ride without a ticket, but even he didn't ask questions. Maybe he saw what others did, a girl running from something she'd never be free of. Hours passed, the sun dropping lower over the horizon, bathing the world in burnt gold. That's when she heard it, the soft crunch of boots on gravel. Her heart leapt, panic shooting through her chest. A tall figure appeared from behind the water tower. He wore a dust-stained hat pulled low over his eyes, a long coat brushing against his boots, and silence hanging around him like an aura. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze steady, unreadable. "Evening," he said, voice deep as thunder. She froze, clutching the baby tighter. We missed the train," she stammered. He tilted his head, studying her a moment before glancing toward the empty track. "Ain't another one coming till tomorrow." His words were simple, but something in his tone wasn't cruel. It was steady, certain, the kind of voice that didn't lie. When he stepped closer, she caught the faint smell of saddle leather and tobacco, the marks of a man who'd spent more time under the sun than beneath a roof. "You got a place to stay?" he asked. She shook her head, eyes wet. "No." The man's jaw tightened slightly, and he looked at the child. "Baby yours?" She nodded. "Then you best come with me," he said finally. "Ain't safe out here when night falls." They walked through the prairie silence until a small cabin appeared against the fading light. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, the scent of stew floating in the cool air. The woman hesitated at the door. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. The cowboy turned, his eyes catching the dying sunlight. "Don't need to. Not yet." He pushed open the door. "You and the little one can rest inside." That night, as the baby slept near the fire, the woman sat quietly by the window, watching the stars blink awake. She could hear the cowboy outside, the soft jingle of his spurs as he checked the horses. There was something about his silence that spoke louder than kindness, a man who'd known loss, maybe more than he'd admit. When he finally came in, the firelight caught the scar running along his jaw. He poured her a cup of coffee, rough hands trembling slightly. "You running from someone?" he asked. She lowered her gaze. "Everyone," she said. He nodded once like he understood, and maybe he did. She didn't know why, but for the first time in weeks, she felt something like safety. The baby stirred, and she whispered, "Shh, little one." The cowboy looked at her then. Really looked at the woman who'd been left behind, and the child who didn't even have a name. "What's he called?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. He doesn't have one." The cowboy's eyes softened, and after a long pause, he said in that low, steady tone, "You do now." Morning came with soft light spilling through the cracks of the cabin wall. The woman woke to the smell of coffee and the faint sound of a harmonica drifting from outside. For a moment, she forgot who she was, or who she wasn't. The baby cooed beside her, tiny fingers reaching toward the sunlight. When she stepped outside, the cowboy stood leaning against the fence, watching the land stretch endlessly ahead. "You sleep?" he asked without turning. "Some," she replied. "Thank you for letting us stay." He nodded, silent as before. The air was clean, the kind that made you believe the world still had hope, somewhere hidden in its corners. He handed her a tin cup. Coffee helped start the day right. She took it, their fingers brushing briefly. That brief touch felt like a promise neither dared to speak. "You said, last night you gave him a name," she said quietly. The cowboy looked at the baby, then at her. "I did. I reckon he'll need one to live by." "Chance," he said finally. Seems right. World don't give many, so when you get one, you hold it tight. The woman smiled faintly. The first true smile she'd allowed herself in months. Chance, she repeated, tasting the word. I like it. Days turned into a week. The woman helped cook and mend while the cowboy worked the land. He spoke little, but his actions said enough. Repairing the roof, leaving wildflowers on the table, making sure the baby always had milk before he rode into town. Rumors began to spread about the Silent Cowboy with the nameless woman, but he never paid them any mind. To him, she wasn't a rumor. She was proof that even the broken can belong somewhere again. One afternoon, as a storm rolled in, she found him fixing the fence under the gray sky. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, and rain started to fall. She ran toward him, shouting over the wind, "You'll get caught out here." He looked up, rain streaking down his face. "Ain't the first storm I've seen." She grabbed his arm, trembling. "Why are you helping us?" "You don't even know who I am." He looked at her, eyes steady, voice low. "I know what it's like to have no one waiting on you. Sometimes that's all a man needs to know." The storm passed, and that night, as the fire burned low, she told him everything, about the man who'd abandoned her, about the town that turned its back. When she finished, tears wet her cheeks. The cowboy listened without judgment, then said, "Ain't nobody's past gonna decide your worth here." The baby stirred again, and the cowboy took him gently in his arms. "Chance," he whispered, "you and your ma got a place now." The woman looked up at him, her voice trembling. "And what about me?" "I don't even have a name." The cowboy smiled faintly, the kind that warmed the heart more than 1,000 words. "You do now," he said softly. "You're Clara, and this here is your home." Outside, dawn began to break once more over the prairie, the start of a life built from ashes, hope and quiet courage. The woman who once had no name now had two, one for herself, and one for the baby who'd given her a reason to live. And the Silent Cowboy, he finally spoke his heart through action by staying,